the children of class 11 arts. We were doing with the last chapter of the book Indian Constitution at Work, and we were doing the political philosophy of Indian Constitution. We were political philosophy of the the Constitution, the philosophy of the Constitution. This is the name of the chapter, and the part which I have I was doing yesterday, and the part which I told you I'll be completing today is the different political philosophy which is followed by India or Indian Constitution. So I have done up till secularism, and today I will start with another political philosophy, and the philosophy is universal adult franchise. You know what is universal adult franchise? Universal means anyone who is 18 years and above. Universal means for all. Universal means for all without discrimination. Universal means for all without any kind of discrimination. Adult means 18 years and above, and franchise means right to vote. Clear? So universal means for all without any discrimination. Adult means 18 years and above, and franchise means right to vote. So anyone who is 18 years and above in India has the right to vote. And you will have to remember one thing in this respect is that, you know, when India started with her election system, when India started with the election system in 1951 November till February 1952, you know, India, in fact, India started with the system of universal adult franchise. That means India, in fact, started with the system of universal adult franchise since the system of election had started in India. And many of them, they say that this was the greatest gamble. Gamble means, you know what is gambling, trying your luck. So many people had criticized this idea of India, that why should India start with universal adult franchise. But India had started with universal adult franchise when the first election had taken place, and in fact India had proved to be very, very successful in this respect. Now the second ideology is federalism. This one which I have told you several times. What do you mean by federalism? India, you know, is structurally federal. Structurally federal means India follows a federal system, which means that India has two sets of government. One government at the center, which is known as the union government, and the other government at the state level, which is known as the state governments. And remember, and the powers between the two sets of government, is divided by the constitution itself. Clear? So that there will be no problem between the two. You know, the powers are actually divided by the constitution itself. Constitution has done this job of dividing the powers between the two sets of the government, and this has been done under three lists: union list, state list, and the concurrent list. Next one comes national identity. What is national identity? You know, that all of us, we are Indians, what we call as fraternity or brotherhood. All of us, you know, in India, we have a national identity. And what is that identity? That we are all Indians. You know, apart from this, we have no other identity. India gives no other identity apart from this particular identity, that I am an Indian or I am a citizen of India. This is the only identity which India gives to its people. Clear? So these are the few political philosophies of Indian Constitution. So what you will do is that you will every particular philosophy, hardly 5 to 6 sentences, you will try to explain them in 5 to 6 sentences. Clear? Next one. So what are the next part? It is on page number 234. What are the achievements which have been made? The substantive achievements of the Indian Constitution. So far we were discussing about the Constitution of India. So what have been the achievements made by the Indian Constitution? First one, you see, the Indian Constitution reflects a faith in political deliberation. What does this mean? Political deliberation, which means that India is a thoroughly democratic state, which means that whenever India takes up any policy decision, any decision when it takes up, it what it does, at every level, it involves the people of the country. Whenever any political decisions or laws are being made, India makes it very clear that all groups of the country should be consulted. Their opinion should be taken. And for this, in India, apart from the political parties, we have another groups, and these groups are known as interest groups. And what is the main work of these interest groups? The main work of these interest groups are actually to go and inform the government what the people of the country want. What are the needs of the people of the country? So the main work of these interest groups is to make the government aware that what are the needs of the people of the country. So the first point, the first achievement of Indian Constitution is that it it has a complete belief in political deliberation. Deliberations means having a consultation with every particular interest groups. Next one, it reflects a spirit of compromise and accommodation. Yes, the accommodation we all know, we have already discussed this, that in India, as India is a land of diversity, India is a land of multiplicity. So in India, if you go across every laws, every rules and regulations of India, you will find that in India, there have been made opportunities for all kinds of diverse groups. And compromise means what, it does not disappoint any particular group. Any particular group, whether it is a religious group, whether it is a linguistic group, whether it is a cultural group, whether it is a minority group, whether it is a backward group, India does not disappoint anyone. It has included provisions for every particular groups existing within the country. So these have been the two achievements of the Indian Constitution. Now we will come to the part on criticism. Although we see that Indian Constitution is regarded to be, one thing I'll tell you is that, Indian Constitution is not only the largest constitution of the world, it is also regarded to be one of the best constitutions of the world. Clear. But unfortunately, you will find that there have been many criticisms against the Constitution of India. Wait one second. You see the criticisms, it's on page number 235. There are three criticisms of the Indian Constitution. First one, that it is unwieldy. Second, it is unrepresentative. And thirdly, it is alien to our conditions. So these are the three criticisms against the Indian Constitution. And we will be discussing all the 3 points we will try to discuss we will try to discuss these 3 criticisms. First criticism is, yes, what is wielding? Wielding is what? To capture, to have. We say that the king wields power. King wields power means the king holds power. So here what happens, you know, the first criticism is that it is unwieldy in the sense that the, wait one second. Yes, this is one first one demerit is that one criticism is that, you know, the whole constitution is found in one single document. The whole constitution, entire constitution of a country, the first criticism is that India believes that the whole constitution must be found in one particular document. Clear? It should be a compact one. But unfortunately, if you see that, it is not so compact in nature as it has been thought of. If you compare the Indian constitution with that of the constitution of America, you will find that the constitution of India is not so very compact as it is expected to be. And second one, you see one thing, another thing is that the size of the constitution is unwantedly large in size. As I've just told you just before some time, I've told you that the constitution of India is known to be the lengthiest or the largest constitution of the world. So not only 395 articles, you know, all the articles are having subdivisions. So it becomes excessively big in size. So when something grows excessively big in size, what happens, you know, to put them in a compact manner, to put them in a single document, it becomes very, very difficult. So the large size of the Indian constitution is the first criticism of the Indian constitution. The second one, it is said that it is unrepresentative in character. Clear? Why? Because, you know, although you know, universal adult franchise have been provided to all, we see that in India, that whenever the members of the constituent assembly, the members who were there in the constituent assembly, who were there to form the Indian constitution, if you find the constituent assembly, we'll find that members from all community, all groups were included, but, you know, most of the views which were kept by these group people who have come from different religions, different region, different caste, different language, their voice were not heard upon. Which means that although they were included within the constituent assembly, but their views were not taken into, their views were not given that much of importance as it was expected to do. So it is regarded to be very, very unrepresentative in character. And the final one is that it is an alien document. Alien means something not of that particular country. Yes, this is very true. You know, Indian constitution, if you see that, that majority parts of the Indian constitution, you know, they have been borrowed from most of the constitutions of the world. As I've told you in the very first chapter, that Indian constitution is a drawn or derived constitution. What does this mean? This means that the members of the constituent assembly, what did they do, you know, before framing the Indian constitution, they have gone through the best parts of the best constitutions of the world, like British constitution, US constitution, French constitution, Irish constitution. So what they have done, you know, they have tried to include the best points from all these constitutions. So it was regarded that whether most parts of the constitution has been taken from the other constitutions of the world. So the third criticism against the Indian constitution is that it is a borrowed constitution. Borrowed means the idea has been taken from several constitutions of the world. However, uh, that how far the criticisms are right, how far the criticisms are true. For that also you are having 2 points on page number 237, especially thinkers like Raja Ram Mohan Roy and others. You see what were their views. Firstly, many Indians have not adapted modern ways of thinking but have made these their own ways. Yes, Raja Ram Mohan Roy and others, they said that it is very wrong to say that Indian constitution is a borrowed constitution. Why? Because according to Raja Ram Mohan Roy, the idea was taken, but it was given a new presentation. As for example, you see that the system of providing for Dalits, the reservation and things like that, these things you will not find in the other constitutions of the world. So the first one is that although points, ideas have been taken, but it is not completely the same one. Second one, when Western modernity began to interact with local cultural systems, something like a hybrid culture began to emerge possible by creating adaptation. Yes, this is also true that when, when in India, when modernity came, so whatever ideas which were getting, which the makers of the Constituent Assembly, they have taken from the other constitutions of the world, they could not be directly put into the Indian constitution because modern cultures, modern techniques were coming up in India. So what happened, we had to directly you cannot take it from the other constitutions of the world. Some changes had to be made, and this is actually what is known to be a hybrid culture. Hybrid culture means actually a combination from all. It is actually a combination of many, and this was the idea which has been actually taken. Now there are certain limitations also on the Constitution of India. Page 237 and 238 you will get it. You will get them in 3 points. What are the limitations of the Constitution of India? Firstly, the Indian Constitution has a centralized idea of national unity. Yes, the first limitation is that India believes that all the people of India must have only one identity, that is, I am an Indian. Although India is having so much of diversity in it, even then, India gives to its people only one identity, which is actually, at times it is very difficult. This is one limitation. That means, as in America, if you go, people are given identities like of the country, of the state to which they belong. But in India, we don't carry that identity. We have Indian Constitution was given Indian Constitution was set or framed within the limitation, and what was that limitation? That all people, whether they are belonging to a different religion, different caste, different whatever, but they must carry only one identity. Second, it appears to have glossed over some important issues of gender justice, particularly within the family. Yes, in some parts of the Indian Constitution, India, there are actually practice of gender discrimination. So some parts of the Indian Constitution, they have overemphasized the parts on gender justice. That means gender discrimination. Overemphasized. Glossed means overemphasized. And thirdly, it is not clear why in a poor developing country certain basic socio-economic rights were relegated to the section of directive principles. Yes, this one I have taught, this point I have explained you while I was explaining the fundamental rights of the Indian Constitution. What is that? That if you see the Indian Constitution, you will find that, all the rights which have been given to the Indian people, the fundamental rights, they are mainly political, cultural and religious in nature. Nowhere will you find socio-cultural, socio-economic needs of the people. Nowhere in the fundamental rights section You will find nothing based on the economic aspects or the social aspects of India. And this has been included in which section? This has been included in the section of directive principles of state policy. And as when I have discussed about the differentiation between the directive principles and the fundamental rights, there only I have told you that fundamental rights are your justiciable rights, which means that if anybody of you denies fundamental right, you can go to the courts of law and you can ask for them. But directive principles are not your legal rights. If it is given, it is good. If not, you cannot ask for it. So unfortunately, especially in a country like India, which is developing in nature and where so many people are actually living under poverty, here in a country like India, it should have been social and economic needs of the people should have been included within the section of fundamental rights, that is your legal rights. Unfortunately, it has been moved to the section of directive principles of state policy. You know why? If a person if a person is not able to earn the basic necessities of life like food, clothing, shelter, education, health, to that person, what is the meaning of a right, isn't it? A person who cannot afford 2 meals a day, what is to him right to equality, right to freedom, right to religion? To him, what is that? So first of all comes your basic necessity of food. Unfortunately, in a country like India, economic aspects and social aspects like division of caste in the society, this have been included within the section of directive principles, not in the section of fundamental rights. And as I've already told you, that as they are within the section of the directive principles, you cannot ask for them. If it is given, it's okay. If not, you cannot ask for them. With this, more or less, the parts on this book gets completed. Next day, I will try to give you questions from this particular chapter, and then I will go to that book. The chapters which are left there, we will complete them. Is it okay to all of you? Okay, thank you very much.